Welcome to a video I promised to do. Makes it sound very dramatic. It's an OC introduction for my characters, starting with Smokey. I've always been really bad at explaining my OC world, so bear with me while I try to explain things without spoiling them, because I do eventually want to turn this world they live in into a graphic novel one day. It all depends on whenever my writer's block goes away and I actually have the motivation to finally start writing again. So I'll start with, if this world had a title, it would be called Obitus. Obitus is a Latin word that means sunset, but that's not originally how I found the word Obitus. Originally, I wanted to name the story after a middle school saying I would tell myself. It was a phrase I would tell myself to make my anxieties go away right before I would do a live presentation or something, because I have really bad social anxiety. The saying was, "It'll be over before you know it." I found comfort in it because most of the time when I finally do, I get up in the front of the classroom. When I finally do that, I kind of just black out, and I've been known to talk really fast. So it really is over very fast. So I just always found that saying was very comforting to me. And because the story I'm writing with my OCs is so personal, I wanted it to have a title that was personal to me. So I was originally going to name it "It Will Be Over Before You Know It." But that's kind of a really long title. So I just wanted to look for, I believe I searched up like words meaning this saying. And after doing research, wasn't even research, I don't know why I'm calling it research like I'm a smart person. It was a Google deep dive where after so long of doing that, I finally found a word that I liked, and it was obitus. Again, it's a Latin word. The definition of it is, I believe, sunset, but it also has another definition: the act of approaching something or the act of going down. It has a weird definition that makes you say, that's a paradox. I don't think you can mean both those things at the same time. That's basically why I picked the name Obitus. And for the genre of the graphic novel, it's mostly centered around horror. That was its original take, but I'm not the best at making things scary in my style. It's not realistic, it's very cartoonish, but horror is like my favorite genre of stories. If I were to put into a different genre other than just horror, I would say mystery. It's also very character focused, especially with our main character here. The setting of the story it's one of those small town horror stories, and I haven't decided exactly where I want it located. I know I want it in the US because that's just what I'm familiar with. So I don't really think I can write a story of my characters being anywhere else because I would do it wrong. Right now, the location has been set to Oregon, and I named the town, it's a completely fictional town, of course, Mirkwood. And it's one of those small towns that you go into it and you feel almost like you've traveled back in time. You feel like this town is very stuck in the past, and there's some context to why it's had a lot of tragedies that have caused it to not evolve as like fast as other towns, which is part of the reason why it's known as like a cursed town. But I do want the story to still take place in 2020 like era. It's not going to be, it'll definitely be in the past when I finally get around to writing it, but it won't be that far in the past. Now, to finally introduce the OC here, that is Smokey, our main character, who I am drawing right now, of course. He is freshly a graduate from high school. He's 18. He works at a pharmacy. The summary of his personality is pretty basic. He's your classic black cat protagonist who's sarcastic, has like a witty response to everything, big introvert, hates talking to people. And weirdly, another thing I made about him was that he is a poet. It's a basic ploy for me to enable my love to write poetry throughout the graphic novel if I wanted to. There's not much else I can say about his personality other than that. Anyways, now that you know a little bit about him, you should know him being alive is it's very short-lived, as you would. What? I can't tell if I was trying to make a pun there or not, but I'm trying to say he's dead. Okay, that's the whole. Yeah. So the entire first chapter, it sets up the setting, gets you maybe attached to him, maybe you hate these types of the stereotypical black cat characters, and then he dies. So basically it's one of those afterlife interpretation stories, although of course I don't actually believe this is what the afterlife is like. That'd be crazy if I did, but they're some of my favorite stories to read about how people interpret, not even like making assumptions based off of a religion, but making your whole new religion that involves an entirely new afterlife. I think it's a fun concept, so I wanted to try it out with my own story. So I would say it's a religion, but religion is a hard way to describe what this afterlife like I don't know, it just doesn't really, it's so hard to talk about something when I myself don't even know what I'm going to say is a spoiler or not, because I really haven't written what would be a spoiler. So in my mind, I just assume everything I'm telling you right now is a spoiler. Again, I'm sorry. There's a reason why I don't talk about my OCs and my characters. It's because I'm really bad at it. Better introduce this afterlife situation that they live in, and the entire mystery, the story revolves around, it's all connected to the red moon. And what the red moon is it foreshadows your death. So right before you die, you would see the moon turning red. And most of the time before you die, you get a dream where you see the moon turning red. And then as soon as the moon turns red is when your death starts to happen. And it's almost as if the moon conspires against you in a way where everything you do is futile, and no matter what you do, you will die in the end. And of course, the characters themselves, they don't know anything about a god or a deity or some higher power that's behind this other than the moon. So of course, all the blame falls upon the moon turning red. And the story is still very based in our modern reality, where there's a very underground religion for worshiping this red moon, and the religions of our modern world still exist in this universe. And part of the mystery of like, why do these religions still exist, and why is this one about the moon so underground and so unknown to the public eye? Because you would think if you heard enough people talking about how the moon was turning red and then they die, you would think that a religion would be much more popular at this point. But it seems to only remain a ghost theory of just the town Mirkwood and not anywhere else in the world. And of course, when it comes to character designs, I wanted to be able to design things that didn't really limit my creativity, because it's very boring to design modern world characters. And I came to the idea of their appearances revolve around how they died. So for Smokey here, without spoiling anything, his death is centered around a farm. So I chose a scarecrow to represent his design. It also really helps me as a person whose favorite animals are crows, and my main character of my story is a scarecrow. It really helps me to just, at every opportunity, pour in my love for crows. And to understand why his name is Smokey is because when you go to the land of the dead, you forget your name. I really can't remember why I came up with this rule. It was to give context to why some of the aspects of this world is a bit cliche, is because I came up with a lot of it when I was in middle school. and it just kind of stuck with me because I have such a soft spot for my middle school self for some reason. Anyways, the name Smokey comes from one of the other characters that I will eventually introduce, which is Frankie, who named Smokey after he realized that he didn't remember his name and he didn't really want to pick or have the responsibility of picking his own name. So he just asked Frankie to pick the name for him, and that's what Frankie came up with, because he smelled like smoke, which can maybe give you a little clue to how he might have died. It sounds really obvious, but it's a lot deeper than just dying in a fire, I promise. There's multiple genres of horror in the story that I want to explore, which is why I kind of wanted to also base their appearances off of how they died. But like most stories, of course, Smokey isn't really the only main character of the story. Of course, we have a whole town of people, even though it's a small town, it still has a lot of people in it that have died. I really want the comic or graphic novel to feel a bit more, I wanted to have like just a lot of filler episodes, because again, it's very character focused. I think one of my favorite things about any story is character development, and if I just went all in on the plot and not enough on the characters, I think I would lose a lot of the charm that's there with the story, or at least the charm that's there in my mind. And I know it's kind of hard with a genre like horror to include nonsense, but there will be scary moments and there will also be heartfelt moments. And the good thing is you can get as attached as you want to them because they're already all dead, so... I think I'll just conclude my rambling by like showing some, I think I actually only have one character sheet of him, but I'll show a character sheet of him because I think it reveals a bit more about like his likes and stuff. I do plan on eventually remaking that character sheet. Anyways, I guess enjoy a time lapse now, because I really have nothing else to yap about. finally done with this drawing. I completely forgot to mention this in the first half of the video, but this drawing is actually a redraw of this old drawing, so I don't know, that's cool to see some style development and stuff. Anyways, if you're still here, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye-bye.